I had seen this before in film class, but this was your first time seeing it.
Which I feel like it's a very film class type of movie. Like, I feel
It
like
is.
if you're an aspiring filmmaker, you should probably watch this movie. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Hooked on Cinema. I am G.
And I'm T.
And today we are going to be talking about what is to some considered the first ever rom-com.
It happened one night. And this was made in 1934 by Columbia Pictures. And back in those days, Columbia Pictures was a tiny studio. They weren't considered like a huge A-list studio back in those days. And it was directed by Frank Capra. And Frank Capra is probably most well known for directing It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So he was a big director back in the day. And it stars Clark Gable as the newspaper reporter, Pete Warren, and Claudette Colbert as the heiress, Ellie Andrews. Yeah, Clark Gable, of course, was a big star way back in the day, back in those times. And Claudette Colbert was also like a major leading actress in the 30s and 40s. The story for this is based on a short story called Night Bus, written by Samuel Hopkins Adams. And then the screenplay for this was done by Robert Riskin, which worked often with Frank Capra. Interestingly, the Night Bus story, it was published in the Cosmopolitan magazine. And so Frank Capra saw it and was like, hey, this could be a good idea. And then like Columbia Pictures bought the rights to it for $5,000 in the summer of 1933. Yeah, back in those days. So I looked up how much that would be for now, and that is about $120,000 in today's money. So the plot of the movie is that Harris runs away. She's married to this guy that her father does not approve. So he's trying to get the marriage annulled. She runs away and trying to get, she pretty much has to cross the United States to get to her husband. And in the process, she runs into a reporter who's down on his luck. He's not doing too well. And he recognizes her, sees the story, and he's like, okay, I'm going to, get an exclusive by traveling with her. And then, of course, in rom-com fashion, there's mishaps that happen along the way, and they fall in love. Just some interesting facts about this one. Again, in 1933 standards, because it was filmed in 1933 and then released 1934. So it only cost $325,000 to make, and it was filmed in 4 weeks. Now, one of the reasons why they're able to do it so cheaply and so fast is because if you ever watch it, you notice the majority of the sets are outside. It's mostly just filmed outside or in standing locations, like buildings that already exist. The only set they really had to build was the bus that they travel on. Mm-hmm. And they stay in like two different, not quite like hotel rooms, but they're like living camp areas. And so it was just one set, and of course they redressed it for either one.
I was going to say what we would now consider an Airbnb.
Yeah, something like that. So I had seen this before in film class, but this was your first time seeing it.
Which I feel like it's a very film class type of movie. Like, I feel like if you're an aspiring filmmaker, you should probably watch this movie. But to add on, as always, in every episode, we are crocheting some stuff. I am crocheting a crop cardigan style thing. See how far I get in this episode. I'm probably going to be doing this for a couple of episodes so that I have an easier pattern to do.
And I am experimenting. I'm trying to make my own designs on hot pads for like dishes and stuff. And so I'm just kind of making like what would be the bottom layer. And then I want to do like granny squares with different designs on it. And make those the same length. And then I sew the two layers together. Well, crochet the two layers together. And then I would have a hot pad, and I can vary the sizes on it.
Nice.
And so yeah, right now I'm trying to do just a block mesh, which it looks like that is what it's supposed to look like. And this is a very handy book. It's the New Crochet Stitch Dictionary. So many different types of stitches and patterns in here. Seriously, it's awesome.
And we will put that in the description down below with an Amazon affiliate link for you guys.
Yeah, because if you're a beginning crocheter or you just have a little bit of knowledge and you want to learn some new stuff, especially like making your own designs and all, this book helps so much. And it teaches you how to read the crochet patterns, like the chicken scratch looking stuff. Because you get some patterns where it's like it actually describes what to do, and then it has like the little symbols, and this teaches you how to read those symbols as well.
Oh, nice. I might actually get me one.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
So just keep that in mind for the description on the YouTube channel. If you are on Spotify or any other podcasts just listening to us, you would have to go onto our YouTube channel to get that, which we definitely recommend because, as always, our community tab is filled with little goodies of future movies that we will watch, so you guys can ask us questions about said movie ahead of time, and we can try to put it into the podcast so you can be a part of this conversation. And as T said, I hadn't watched this movie. It did feel very deja vu when watching it, so I'm not sure if maybe I did watch it in one class at film school.
Because we took some of the same classes just at different times, so you might have seen it.
So yes, but I will admit, for the humor of the time, I found myself laughing more times than I thought I would, which is what you want in a rom-com, but I just...
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's an older movie, and of course it's black and white, being from the 30s. So people nowadays, especially the young kids, they don't like those types of movies because they find them boring or dull. They're not full of special effects. And for being a rom-com as well, back in those days, you could not do certain things that you can now in romance movies. You can't really show, like, sex scenes, of course, is out of the question. But you can't show anything that might be considered sexy or explicit in any way. And like, as you'll notice, there's when they're traveling, they stop in those little communities where they get like a little tiny house to themselves for the night. And even though they're pretending to be a married couple along the way, so no one else questions the single man and single woman going together, because again, in those days, that was not proper at all. The beds, it's two separate like twin beds. They're not like queen beds or anything like that, because also in those days on film and television, you could not show a couple in bed, even if they're just sitting there talking or sleeping. You couldn't show that.
Yeah, I know. I Love Lucy got into big trouble because I think they were one of the first ones to ever show a man and a woman in bed together. And
yeah,
so
I think they were one of the first. That might have happened later on in the show though, because I do remember early on in the show they did have their separate beds.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's interesting that it did follow the formula of a rom-com, in the sense of kind of being put into a new situation, new environment, and making the couples kind of interact with each other.
Well, since it's so early, do you think it helped set the precedent for the rom-com story?
Yes, there are definitely things about it that were like cliche, right? It's the whole opposites attract, so that is one of the tropes of rom-com. It's actually one of the more popular ones, I think. That one and enemies to lovers, which you could argue is part of this movie.
Yeah, they're very different, and he's very kind of rude to her because he thinks she's like a spoiled brat, which of course she is rich and she's used to kind of having people do things for her, and he's used to having to make it on his own and rough it, and so he is very tough with her.
He is. And it's like interesting. One of the funniest parts that I found funny is when she's trying to talk and he just really like tells her to shut up. Just shut up. And I'm like, oh my God, you would not be able to talk to a woman like that in nowadays. But it's like, sometimes you want to. If you're on a bus, you don't know this person, you just want them to be quiet. And so it's like interesting kind of perspective on all of that. And then the whole wall. So they like
The walls of Jericho.
the walls of Jericho.
The
Yes.
blanket that they put up in between the beds.
Yes. And I thought that was really interesting because it showed kind of like their guardedness, not just to each other, but to the world. Even though she's a spoiled princess, she's never been able to choose anything for herself. Even the one thing that she tries to choose, which is her husband, which is, in those times, and I would even argue in these times, considered a gold digger. I think he was a gold digger.
He definitely was not good. And that's why her father was so against it. He's like, I can buy him off easily.
Yeah. So he didn't like that, she was with someone who could be bought off. And he was very, nonchalantly about the money. It was a very interesting dynamic, I will not lie. But also when you hear about how they met. So like the story that they met, I'm like, this is the first ever guy that your dad doesn't know, and he took you on an adventure for a day and you fell in love. Which, to be fair, there are like Disney movies. I don't know if they would be considered rom-coms, but they are romantic movies for like kids. In which I think there is one movie, and I can't remember it right now, but it's where like the famous actor or singer gets like in the suburban life for like a day, and it's literally a day like that this person needs to help her out with or help him out with, and then they fall in love. And I'm like, I think it's funny because if it's done in one day, it's like weird. Like, how quickly can you fall in love? And I mean, as two people that I think have not fallen in love, it's like hard for us to really understand that. Because there is a quote that says, it takes you a second to like someone, a minute to fall in love with someone, and an hour to, be unforgettable, or something like that. I'll put the quote on to the screen. But either way, it's this idea that love is quick, love is sudden, like love at first sight type of thing. And I mean, I'm a product of like childhood love and all that. So, I mean, I am a bit biased in nature of like what I believe, like how people can fall in love and how people can quickly. But like one day, girl, you were with this other dude for like 2 weeks or something. I don't know how long it takes to get to the other side of the US, but you were with him for a minute, okay? Enough to go to 2 hotels. So that was 2 days at least, 2 nights.
Yeah, but then they had all the fun adventures along the way, and I think she liked having someone who didn't cater to her every need. Because then when she does finally get back to the husband and we see them interact together, he's just like, yeah, whatever you want, darling, that's what we'll do. Whatever you want. And then, the reporter, Pete, is just like, no, you need someone who's going to talk back to you. But he still obviously like falls in love with her and cares about her. I don't know if you noticed, because again, I think this set kind of the standard for a lot of movies. At the end, hopefully you have seen this movie so I can describe how the end is, but if not, this kind of spoils everything.
Spoiler warning.
Yeah, for everyone listening. So when her father is making her do like an actual wedding ceremony to her husband, because he's like, okay, you can come home, you can be with your husband, I give up, I just want you home. And she's going to go through with it because she thinks Pete had left her. Like when you watch that wedding scene, did you get a sense of deja vu? Because it reminded me very specifically of a certain movie.
Yeah.
Really? All right. It reminded me of Spaceballs from Mel Brooks.
I haven't seen Spaceballs.
Oh, you haven't? Oh my God, girl, we gotta watch this. So when her father is walking her down the aisle. He's like, he only took a little bit of money. He didn't take the full reward.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like the exact same thing that happens in Spaceballs. When the king is taking his daughter to the altar there. I think people have now been taking from this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it did set a few standards, and I do like the whole getaway car. Like, I got a car waiting if you change your mind.
Yeah, because in that point, the father had met Pete, and he knew that they loved each other, and he'd rather have her be with this news reporter than be with this guy that he could buy off, because he couldn't buy off the reporter.
I do like how he offers him the reward money, and he's like, no, I just spent this much amount on your daughter. That's all I want back. Like, what I paid for is what I want back, because I would not have spent that money had it not been for your daughter. You know, like, it's very... And I think he is very prideful in the way that, like, I don't think he would accept his wife's money. Like, he would want to earn his own money for his family.
Yeah. He's definitely a working man. That's not going to go away.
I mean, you could be a working man and still want to be lavished. I'm a working person, and if I had a rich man to take care of me, I'd be more than welcome that.
This movie has an interesting thing as being for a rom-com. It won 5 Academy Awards.
Ooh.
It won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. Usually rom-coms aren't doing that. Yeah, it swept it.
Nice. And this was in 19.
Yeah, and interestingly, it was not a hit when it came out. It was a sleeper hit. So it played in like all the small theaters, and then it was like word of mouth of everyone who went. They like loved it, and then they brought all their friends to go see it, and it just got bigger and bigger throughout the year.
Oh, nice. Okay. I mean, I could see how you could like it. Like, even the visual effects that were done. So the only real, I think, visual effects that were used in this movie was, of course, the car scenes. So every time they were traveling in the car together, they, of course, you have that wide shot of them in their cars getting in and stuff, but when they're actually like talking and you have a straight on shot of them two, the background is not a projection, which a lot of people may think, and it's definitely not LED, or it's not LED screens like we would now use. It was, so basically what happens in those times is they had canvases and they would roll them to make that illusion of like the street moving.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just that. And like it was a little jarring for like the movies that we do now, but I'm like, it's not bad. They're very consistent with it. So every time that they're in the car, you know, and really the focus is on them. So like you can kind of ignore it. Like ignore the bad painting in the background. Not that it was a bad painting, it's just a very obvious painting.
Well, so, just because of what everyone's used to nowadays.
Yeah.
It's just very noticeable.
Yes. But other than that, it was really nice because it did give you a kind of shot that you really needed, which was like seeing her kind of being their interactions with each other, and just like for the times, I think that would have been like very revolutionary. I think that they may have been not really noticed. I mean, these are the people that first ever movie was a train coming at the screen, and people ran out of the movie theater in fear because they thought the train was going to kill them. Which, to be fair, if you had never seen a movie a day in your life, you might, especially now, you might think a spaceship is coming towards you.
Yeah, it's even if you don't watch the old films or like them, you do have to give credit to everything that they tried, because of their creativity and so on, we would not have the films that we have nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's not just like having the moving backgrounds and car scenes and so on, it's all the stunts that they did. And also they messed with 3D. So they did have like 3D effects back in those days. You had to wear like very special glasses and so on, and how they filmed it was different. But they also tried smell-o-vision. That was the thing they tried back in the day, of where it's like the theater where the film was in would have like certain ways to give you certain smells and so on during certain scenes in the movie. And so they were really cool and very creative back in those days of trying to just discover the next best thing with movies.
They were, and it was, I don't know, very interesting. I sure liked it. I definitely find myself laughing more than I thought I would have for the kind of movie that it was. I mean, I know it's a rom-com, but like for the time period, our humor now is very different than it was back then. So the fact that I could still laugh at some of the jokes, it was really fun.
Yeah, also speaking about that with the humor, it is different humor, and I think nowadays you would have gotten a lot more physical humor. Like with The Proposal, there was quite a bit of like physical comedy in that. Whereas in this, some of the comedy is just the dialogue. So you really have to listen to the movie because they can say funny lines really fast.
And just like the expressions on their faces, I feel like sometimes like the being told shut up would not have been as effective had, you know, it not been like her reaction to that, like, I'm a gasp, like, I can't believe you told me to shut up. But also not being able to say that because in those times, like, women didn't do that. So it was always really interesting to me to see kind of how they play off of each other is one of the bigger things. You know what's funny? Through the whole movie, I started thinking of Anna and, so the guy with the deer.
I have not seen it, thankfully, so I cannot help you with that.
It's Kristoff and Anna, and they're a great little love story. No, they're not. I have so many mixed feelings about that too. But basically, in Frozen, there is two characters that fall in love with each other. Yes, I watch children's films, even though I have no children. I have a bunch of cousin kids. None of them made me go. But either way, in Frozen, you have the whole, like, she has to find her sister, so she gets help from Kristoff, who then helps her find her sister, and they go on an adventure. And he's just talking about how silly and ridiculous it is that she has fallen in love with a guy that she met in one event, like at one ball. That's it. And she's like, I'm engaged. She's like, cool, how long have you known this dude? 3 hours? What? She's like, yeah. He's like, you should not be getting engaged to people who you've only known for a long period of time. I think at some time in the trip, he's like, look, you've known me longer than you've known your fiance. At like some point, because they go on this journey. But so like their relationship kind of brought me back to this movie. Like every time I was seeing them, it made me like kind of funny. And I'm curious to see if they were inspired by this movie or types of movies like this, because it was very similar in a very eerie kind of way. But also the whole like relationship between Anna and Christian is just talking about the silliness of like love at first sight and like jumping into a relationship you know nothing about, and like you don't know the person, but because of all these like romantic movies, you've just idolized this idea of like, oh, you meet someone you're super attracted to and then you're just gonna marry them, like that's it. There's no like finding out if you're compatible. I don't know, I always found the other people interesting, like the one place where they get mad at the girl because she didn't have money.
So yeah, after Pete had left, Pete leaves to go get some money because he wants to marry her. But she thinks he ran out on her, and then the place where they're staying, they think he ran out on her and she doesn't have any money to stay, so they kick her out.
Yeah. Which little do they know, she has a lot of money.
So, interesting thing about this movie, Claudette did not want to do it. She hated it.
The main actress?
Yeah. She hated it. She thought the whole time she was making it, it was the worst movie that she ever made. So interesting thing, back in those days, actors, their contracts with studios were very different than what they are nowadays. So usually an actor would be stuck in a contract with one specific studio for like 7 years, and then they'd be loaned out to other studios or traded for specific movies by other studios. So, for example, at that time, Clark Gable was contracted to MGM. And so the only way Columbia got him, especially since Columbia was such a small studio back in those days, is because the head of MGM was mad at Clark Gable at the time. So what happened was Clark Gable did have some very serious health issues that he was recovering from. Made a full recovery on that. But then he was taking a lot of time off and resting, and then he refused to do a movie at MGM. So then the head of studio was like, you know what? No, you're going to be forced to go do a movie. I'm loaning you over to Columbia to go do this little movie. And head of MGM was like, yeah, this is like a movie that's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be terrible for your career. No one thought it would be great except for the people at Columbia who were trying to make it. And even Clark Gable also didn't think it'd be great at first. But once he got onto set and so on, him and Frank Capra had a good rapport. They had so much fun making the movie because also, if you watch the movies made by Clark Gable before then, this was very different than what he was able to play before. He was always shown as like the strong leading man type, and this one he got to be witty and funny and just loose, and so he had a lot of fun with the character. So him and Frank Capra had so much fun making the movie. Claudette at the time was contracted to Paramount, and she was supposed to go on vacation. She had only 4 weeks of vacation before she had to go make her next movie. And I think it was like around the holidays too. And so she was like, if you want me to be in this movie, like on my time off, I'm going to charge you double my usual fee. So like a good chunk of that $325,000 was her fee. And yeah, she said that because she figured Columbia was like, oh, we're not going to be able to pay that. No way. And the head of Columbia was like, yeah, we'll pay it. We want you in here. And so she was then contracted and forced to be in there. And probably because of that, and she kind of like missed out on her vacation, she just was not happy at all on the set. Well, she wasn't really welcoming to it, as Clark Gable was. Like, he softened up, he loved it, he worked with Frank Capra for making scenes better and so on, and she was just like, okay, I'm here, let's get the scene done, let's go. And then at the end of it, she told her friends, I just got done making the worst movie I've ever been in.
And she won an Oscar for it.
She won an Academy Award for it, and when she won it, she only said, I owe this to Frank Capra. So she gave credit where credit's due, because the director, kept her in there and made her do the movie. So, and also interestingly, Clark Gable is a huge Hollywood name for back in those days. And some people, if you don't recognize the name, he is from Gone with the Wind. He was on that as Rhett Butler, and so many movies. And this is the only movie where he actually won an Academy Award for. He was nominated for a couple others, but this was the only one who actually won it. And he actually gave the award to some kid who was like a fan of his, because he was like, it's just going to sit around in my house. You can have it,
That's awesome.
And when he died, the kid sent it to his family.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's a lot of like behind the scenes tidbits on that. How do you think their character development was in this movie from the first time we see each character to the end?
So there's character development in both of them. I will say that. You could argue that it was primarily her, but like he also softened. He was a cynic, if you might say. Like, he really didn't believe in love. He believed that, like, people just use people. And then by the end of it, he's like shouting to the wind that he's in love, and, you know, so hopeful. And that's why it was also so devastating when she, like, goes back to her husband, because it's like you see this, like, very cynic-y person become very hopeful and then have that be destroyed because of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
It's just so sad. And then her, it's like I did feel like she was more like, before, you know, she did nothing herself. She was a prima, you know, she was a spoiled rich kid. And then, like, at the end of it, she kind of wanted to earn her way in the world or see what she was capable of. And both of those changes were done because of each other. And I think that's what's one of the best versions of a relationship, is when you bring out the best versions of each other and maybe not change each other, but bring out a version of each other that maybe you weren't either aware that you had or that you really were. Because I feel like he really did want to be hopeful. He just had been beaten up in his life where that wasn't a thing anymore. Like, he did not want to do that because he'd been hurt so many times, or hadn't really found the right woman, and, like, maybe he'd been rejected by so many women that's, you know, what made him such a cynic. But I did feel like he was always open to the possibility of hope, and it wasn't until she came along that it happened. And then I feel like she may have thought that she was self-sufficient or wanted to be self-sufficient because she didn't want to make up her mind, right? Like, that's why she married the dude she married, was like her trying to be independent and trying to make it on her own. It was just done horribly wrong in the worst way possible. But, I mean, not worst way possible, but, like, in a not so proactive way. And not really independent when you're going from one father to a guy who's, like, kissing you at your feet, you know, giving you everything you want. So it was very interesting to see the way that they changed. But you could see, even from the very beginning, that those changes were still within their character. And I thought that was really...
Yeah, nothing seemed too out of place, and also fairly realistic for the time that they were together. Because also in those days, it took a long time to travel from one end of the country to the other. So they were together technically for several days, and it was realistic, I think.
Yep, because they didn't, like, magically fall in love like the next day. It was, like, through the course of a time, and it was because they wanted very similar things, and so it was...
Yeah, and when they first meet, he's just sees a story. He's amused that this rich girl is trying to make it across the country on her own without any money. And she is just really curious about him. She's never met anyone who talks to her the way he does. And he also can maneuver every single situation that they get in. You know, he makes sure they get the room for the night. He takes the little money she has left because she's going to blow it really fast.
Which she starts blowing it really fast.
Yeah. So she just never met anyone like that. So I think at first she was just curious about him. And then slowly she fell in love with him.
No, I agree with that. I think there was a sense of curiosity at the very beginning. And then it, you know, develops into real love. And it's just really beautiful. I know that we had talked about, what was it, The Notebook? For a minute, we had done The Notebook as one of our first podcasts. And so it's interesting to see, like, what I would debate is renowned as one of the greatest love stories in the world is very, very toxic And this, what some may perceive as toxic at first glance, is actually very humbling and very like earnest. And it's just like this, like I would love a little like love story like this. Like sometimes I need to be put in my place, but also he respected her enough to be put like in his place too. Even though she didn't like wasn't aggressive about that, he like would listen to her and care about her opinions.
Well, he was also like, he did come off as harsh and maybe rude to her in some of the ways that he talked to her, but he was always a gentleman when it came to certain things, such as them sharing a room. She was, of course, reluctant to do so, and he was the one who told other people, yes, she is my wife, because he knew they couldn't be living or like staying in the same room for the night unless they were married. So he told like the inn owners, like, yes, she's my wife. And he's the one who puts up the line and the blanket over it without her even saying anything about that. He just does it. He gives her his best pair of pajamas because she doesn't have any clothes at this point. She lost her luggage. He does all that without her asking for it or really complaining about it, like saying, oh, I don't have anything to wear, I'm not going to sleep in the same room as you. Nothing like that. He just does it and tells her this is how it's going to be, and she has a choice to accept it or go back out into the rain, because it was raining at the first time when they had to spend the night together. And thankfully she's like, okay, this is the best situation, I'll just stay here for the night. But yeah, he was always a gentleman about it.
Yeah, I did like that part where he was very like, he thought a few steps ahead of what she would need. So again, this is like, he was in a way kind of romantic. He understands like a woman's reputation, he understands these things, so he wasn't opposed to it. I just truly believe that like in the background of his character he had just been rejected.
Well, he had just pretty much lost his job when we meet him. So he was really down, and then he sees this heiress, which everyone knows has run away, and he sees an opportunity to get the major scoop of the year, story-wise, and get his job back. But then also, a little bit later, her father releases in the newspapers that there's a huge reward. So then you think at first, okay, he's also in it for the reward. But then by the end, when he actually meets the father, he's like, I don't want no reward. I just want like the $37 I'm owed for the clothes I lost along the way.
Well, the clothes, half of the rent, like half of the like
yeah, paying to stay at places and so on. I think it was a really nice love story, and if you are ever interested in making a rom-com and so on, I think you need to watch this.
And as a person who has studied many rom-coms and made a few of my own, as she has assisted in a lot of those, I definitely want to make my senior thesis, which is a rom-com, into an animated series.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, animated movie. I think that'd be fun. I think we have all the dialogue. I think, have the audio of everybody, and it'd be very interesting. I don't think it'd hold up because of some of the lines that were in there were a little
bit. No, we would have to adjust it.
We'd still get canceled. But it was fun. I think that's that. Oh, we should do that. I actually like that idea. But yes, I definitely think this is a movie that if you're studying film or very interested in film, this is a movie that you will find interesting. Because it's an interesting story. Like, I think some of the best movies in the world can be two people in a room together. If their chemistry is on point, if the dialogue is good. And again, I think it was great for the time. I think now it's a little bit like a little off, not too much that you wouldn't enjoy it. But I do think that there were a few moments where I'm like, those were the times, don't like get mad, those were the times, I had to really tell myself that. But it was a very, like I said, I laughed and I knew the humor was very different. It was more interactive and not physical, like, you know, we're used to with Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds, and even like Jackie Chan. Those are all very physical actors. And there's a lot of actors that are very physical comedy, but I think it's sometimes even harder to write comedies where it's not the physicality, but rather the lines, because it's all about the timing and execution of these lines and the response that you get back. So it's very interesting to me that you mentioned that the actress didn't want to be there, only because of the fact that she at least didn't show that in her performance, or at least I don't think. You know, maybe there was one or two times. I think it was with her dad, but I think even then she was playing that like little kid version of herself. So it's like,
well, she was considered one of the top actresses of her time. And so
yeah,
that's just a credit to her ability.
So I do love that even though she may have like not been a fan of it, she still like respected people enough to give it her best, you know. So like, I'm personally grateful that she did that, because I'd be kind of upset that she, you know, if she didn't do that, I guess, is what my thought process on that would be. Is, you know, if she didn't do that, and if she just like half-assed it, I think this movie would not be the way that it is. I think that it would have failed.
Mm-hmm. Actually, some other, I don't remember their names, but when I looked up the information, a couple other actresses had turned it down. Because, again, this was a small studio trying to make it, and it wasn't like any other romance movies that had already been made up to that point. So people were very wary of like being a part of it. And I think they did a great job with getting the cast and the director that they did. Did you lose count?
Yes. You'll notice in this podcast, I am not the best at multitasking sometimes. I think I'm getting.
Use place markers like every 10 stitches or so if you need to.
I do. That's how I was able to do this part without like thinking of it, because I'd measured out the stitch markers. It's just that this is, they wanted the halfway point, but they don't tell you that beforehand, so you kind of have to count the halfway point. So, yeah, it's been a minute since I've used this pattern, but I used it for a friend's gift for her birthday, and she really liked it. And so now I'm making a jean style version of it. So it's like the jean pattern with this, because it's jean yarn for some reason. But I'm using white as the main color and the jean part as an accent. So it's really, really fun, and I really, really like it. So sorry about missing my camp, guys. You're getting a little bit of a tutorial on crocheting.
Well, we do crochet. We're talking about movies, so it'll be a mixture of both.
Yep. But what was the topic we were talking about? Oh, movies and the rom-com era.
Yes.
Of course, movies. But I can be sometimes scatterbrained, guys. It's a thing. No, well, what I find funny that you mentioned that a lot of people didn't want to do rom-coms is I know a lot of actors and actresses who don't want to do rom-coms, even though, like, I know a lot of filmmakers who don't want to do rom-com. And I get that, because comedy is, I think, the hardest genre. For me, it's horror. Like, horror and thriller are actually really hard for me to create. And I know that because I went, like, my first year at film school, I did, literally the first semester of film school, I had a introduction to production class, and where we had to make short films. And literally the first like assignment, the teacher goes, "No one do comedy. Like, I will fail you if you do comedy." And I didn't remember this, to be fair. I'm very scatterbrained even then. And I didn't remember. So when we did our first film, I did comedy. Because I just needed to create a script really fast. So I did one of like a nerd that's like on a date with a hot girl, and his hot friend that's like a jock is like helping him through that stuff and like the awkwardness of that whole situation. It was funny. Okay, people laughed. It was great. And then it turned out like everyone in class had done comedy, but only like 2 of us got laughs. 2 or 3 of us got laughs. So he was like, "Okay, those 2 or 3 people, you can continue doing comedy. The rest of you, now I will fail you. Don't do it again. You don't have the timing for it." And then my final for that class was a horror, and it was literally the worst movie on the planet. Like, I can't believe I made something so horrible, and not in a good way. Nothing about it was good. It was just bad. It was just bad, and it was my final, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna fail this class." After the fact. And then my teacher literally goes, "Because I know you are a romantic comedy person, and horror is the complete opposite of it, I will pass you for attempting to go outside of your genre. But we both agree that was a terrible movie." And so, like, I get as a filmmaker not wanting to do it, because comedy, if you don't have the timing, it's a really hard thing to sell. But budget-wise, they are the cheapest type of movie to make. They are almost guaranteed nowadays of getting your money back. If not making a profit, you make your money back. I think there's been rarely any rom-com movie that's been made in the last 10 years that has not made their money back. It's like a safety movie. Which is probably why I don't watch them in the movie theaters. Like, I would wait to watch them at my home. But there's been a few nowadays that I liked. Like Anyone But You, I think, is a new movie that came out with the guy from Top Gun. I like how he wasn't the main character in Top Gun, but a lot of people refer to him as the guy in Top Gun. He's now the main guy in Twister too, or Twisters. So there's that, but I still see him as the guy from Top Gun.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to remember his name. I'm looking up really fast. It is Glenn Powell.
Glenn Powell, yes.
And interesting note on him though, he's very like old Hollywood like. So it's really cool that he's getting really out there and more well known.
Yeah, well, he has, first of all, that look of classic, Hollywood. He is a Texas boy born and raised, though. Woo! Sorry, I love me my Texas actors, okay? As a Texas born and raised, I am all about that. As well as Jensen and what's their name?
How dare you blank on them?
I
know. Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki.
There we go. Supernatural, guys. It's great.
I was just trying to remember the last what would be considered rom-com that I've seen, like most recent, because again, I don't watch romance movies very often. The last one I watched streaming on Prime Video was Shotgun Wedding, made in 2022. Starring Jennifer Lopez and Todd Lieberman and so on. And that one was pretty funny. Have you seen that one?
No.
Yeah, that one was just kind of over the top. There were families together for a destination wedding, and then gunmen take everyone hostage, and they have to, try to save everyone while they're having she was having cold feet before the wedding and so on. So they're trying to work out their issues while trying to take out gunmen. It's hilarious.
Oh my goodness. The ludicrousness of these movies. It reminds me of Lost City that recently came out. That one was ridiculous. It was, if you want to shut off your brain and like just...
I laughed. I thought it was funny.
It is funny, but it is also a ridiculous concept. Like, even more than Thunderbolt has probably ever done. Like, I think that's really out there.
Well, that's the issue that filmmakers have nowadays, though. So much has already been done. They need to do something that's different, and sometimes, yeah, it does seem out there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so either way, this movie in particular was a refreshing, kind of small movie. It wasn't too long. What was the runtime?
It was like 80 minutes.
Yeah. Like, which is an average back in that time. Now we make them like close to 3 hours long. So, you know, it's a nice, refreshing thing. It is in black and white. But honestly, that didn't get to me. Normally it does, I think.
But I never have an issue with it because I grew up watching black and white stuff. TV shows and movies. That's, thankfully, I would just, you know, watch reruns of like the Three Stooges, and my favorite comedy brothers are the Marx Brothers, and all their movies in black and white because that's the time period, and I'm just used to it that way. And to all budding filmmakers out there, you need to make sure you watch those old black and white movies because they're the ones that started everything. They laid the groundwork for what you want to do. So you might find them boring, very understandable, because again, the comedy was different, the action was different, a different time period. So you'll see a lot more smoking in the movie. That was a big thing in this one, a lot more smoking. And just the way people talk to each other and the slang of the time and so on. So you need to still watch them if you are studying making film, just because of the groundwork that they laid for you.
I agree with that. Yeah. And this one is definitely one where if you want to study what rom-com, you know, began with, this is definitely a pinnacle of rom-com. It does have a lot of the tropes, and the reason that I said you could argue that this is an enemies to lovers is because the rich girl did not like that the reporter just wanted to spend time with her and help her out for, you know, like
a story. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of like she didn't want him to succeed. She didn't want him to get a story. But at the same time, she needed his help. So it was like very interesting. They were also opposites in the way that he's worked every day of his life and she's never worked a day in her life, and just the interestingness of it. But they were also very respectful to each other. So that was, I think, very interesting to me to see two characters that, because of the times, they were, I want to say, more respectful of different people. Even though you're different than me, I'm going to still respect the effort that you're putting in. Like, she was grateful when she got the best, you know, pajamas. She was grateful that he put up the line when, I think the first time she complained about the food, but after that she never complained. After that, she was just
like when he found the rare carrots when they were crashing in haystacks on a farm in the middle of the night. She was like, I'm not gonna eat rare carrots. And then eventually she just got hungry enough she had to.
Yep. But even then, I think like the meals that she got from the hotel, well, not hotels, but the Airbnbs of those times. The Airbnbs of those times. It was like, I think there was one scene where I think in the second place that they stay at, he was like, I don't want to hear you complaining about it. And she's like, oh, I'm not. I'm actually really grateful for this meal. First of all, it does show her growth in the sense that she's no longer like complaining about the food that he's available to get. But it's also an appreciation that, hey, this dude is giving me like, or helping make food for me. So it's like really nice. I don't know. I feel like there were a lot of times where they could have made her a lot more rude and a lot more prima donna. But then again, I think that would have made her dislikable. So I think it is a balancing act of them having a mutual respect for each other, even though they're different. Then that can be created into life, into love, rather than if they had no respect for each other at all. And then,
perhaps if the movie had been longer, they would have played with that more of having her be more disagreeable and more of a spoiled brat in the beginning, and then have see the change happen. But they didn't have enough time for that.
no, yeah, and I mean, I think timing-wise, they still did a fantastic job of it. It's not like, I felt like it was rushed or anything. And I do think that they did a good thing where they kind of showed the time progressing. So I think that was a huge thing of showing, like, oh, time has passed, guys. Like, time is passing. Because then it's not the same. Like, you can't have him arguing that, like, I can't believe you're gonna marry this dude that you just met, or that you married this dude that you just met a while ago, and then you also be the dude that she just met, right? Like, I do like that you see the, like, time is passing, days are going by, and that's how they're becoming respectful of each other. That is how they're learning to love each other. So that's really a great thing. So I think there's a lot of character development that you can learn from this movie. So I definitely recommend it. And I believe that for us, we're going to try to do one classic movie every month. And then, of course, more newer ones. And as a reminder, if you guys are interested in giving you our point of views or getting questions answered, always leave them on our community tab on YouTube or down on these videos down below. We will be posting the March lineup for March, like the movies we're going to do for March, and then we will have an April poll. So the top ranked movie in our YouTube poll will be the one that we will review. And why we do it so ahead of time is because T is very organized and gives me enough time to edit these and film them ahead of time. So we do film like a month ahead. So that's why we need to get y'all's input a month ahead. So we appreciate you guys kind of listening to us, as well as getting y'all's feedback. I really like this movie. I didn't watch it more than once. Probably not going to watch it more than once. But while I was watching it, I definitely enjoyed it. So yeah. I really do like that.
And the genre for our next month is going to be action films.
Yes!
Yeah.
So, oh yes. So this has been a great thing. I learned a bit about this movie, which I like. Got introduced to, I think, a beautiful rom-com movie. It is interesting to see rom-coms of these times because they are quite different than ours, but there's also so many similarities that it is a fun experience to experience. So I don't know, maybe next year I'll watch it again.
I have it on DVD, so I can watch it whenever I want.
See, I rented it. I had to rent it. Yeah. However, we will put links to both the book that T recommended for crocheters
the new Crochet Stitch Dictionary. It's by Nellie Brass and Evelyn Hetty Burkett.
So I will put that in the description along with the possibility to buy either the DVD or the video stream of the movie on Amazon, our affiliate page, And as always, this episode was brought to you by you guys. You guys supporting us helps us do this more often.
And we just have fun with this anyways. We like crocheting. We get to chat because we live in different states, so we don't get to see each other otherwise.
Yep.
So this is fun. How does your crochet project go for this video?
I got this much. I got 2 lines.
Yeah, I got a few rows on mine. Got my little block mesh going on. It actually looks like a block mesh, so I'm happy with that.
I know. I was gonna say, I like the color on that.
Yeah, it's a 100% cotton yarn because if you're making something for like hot pads or pot holders, you want to use cotton. Acrylic can burn, so use 100% cotton. And this is like white with bits of blue, green, and yellow in it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, this is my first time making it, so I'm just practicing, and if it turns out well, great. Then I can make more. But I'm just trying to make my own. I've done enough crocheting now that for some things like this, I can kind of play with it and make my own designs. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
And if you guys are interested in anything that T does, because she's so talented, she does have an Etsy shop, and I will link that down in the description down below, where you guys can purchase her stuff. If you've seen our previous episodes, we did have her making the baskets.
Yeah, yellow and white nesting baskets, a set of them. That's going to be on there. Yeah. I finally sewed in all the ends on those. That takes forever. Like when you're switching through colors, you get so many ends as you're switching the colors. And I finally sewed all those in. I just need to take some pictures of them and upload them. But I'll probably do that tomorrow.
I usually crochet them in as I'm going. That's why I don't have extra. Like,
what happens when you switch colors, though?
Yeah, so like when I switch colors, like here, I tie it off and then I lay it across on top of this, and then I just crochet on top of it.
Yeah.
And so then it's already seamed in. That's just what I do because I don't want to be like sewing them in.
Yeah, I've done that for some things. Yeah, it can work, but I find with the baskets it's just easier to sew it afterwards.
That's fair. That is fair. They look really pretty though, so that works out. Yay. But yes, I will probably continue to do this next episode, and we'll see how many episodes it takes me to make this. Because I did finish my Princess Tiana, by the way, from a few episodes before. Haven't finished the Mando from the episode before, but
you have too many projects going.
You know, a few projects. I am learning, guys, along with you guys. And if you want to know where I get the patterns for the Disney princesses and the Star Wars plushies that I'm making, I will link that stuff down below in the description. As well as this pattern. This is from another YouTuber and content creator. So I might put her blog on there as well. I think it's a really cute crop.
Yeah, you should.
Thing. So give her some props. And yeah. So that is the end of our talk. Any last minute thoughts?
No, just a recommendation to at least see this movie once in your life. It is worth it.
Yes. I definitely think if you do watch a lot of rom-coms, this will feel a little bit deja vu-ish, but it is very beautiful character development, and it is quite entertaining. So let us know if you laughed in this movie, and what are your thoughts on this movie? If you've seen it, are you now going to give it a chance? Because hopefully we've introduced you to this, and see you guys next time.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye.